All right, welcome to another episode of Net Chasers. I'm very excited for this episode. We have Jamie Boggs from Grand Canyon. Jamie, thanks for joining us. This is a conversation just about athletics, but also we want to highlight great leaders like yourself at GCU, what you've been doing. So thank you for coming on. Let me just tee this up. So in your chair as AD at GCU, what is the current state of college athletics?
I think we're in a really good position. We're very fortunate. Obviously, college athletics has changed pretty substantially over the last decade, but really over the last 3 years. So it's definitely a different landscape than when I first started 20 plus years ago. But I think because often the success of an athletics program depends heavily on the success of the university. That's why we're in a good position. And we've been very fortunate that our university has worked so hard to be one of the largest private Division I universities in the country, one of the largest Christian universities in the country. We just keep growing. The awareness of who we are as a university keeps growing, and all of that benefits athletics. So in this time of where it's revenue generation, it's making sure we have fans in the seats, people watching our games. I think just the general growth of the university has really allowed us to continue to thrive in this landscape.
And with that being kind of the foundation, what have you seen in the last 5-10 years with GCU, but also that chair the last 4 years? Like, where are the pressures with this new landscape, but also, the successes that the university that has had in its changing landscape?
Yeah, I think when you look at other universities, and I don't definitely want to assume it's all universities, but in my experience, a lot of times the university and the athletics departments, they don't operate together. They're a little bit siloed. And so you might have this operating budget here and this revenue generation here, but it's completely separate from the university. Here we're very collaborative. We all drive in the same direction. And so we don't really have those us versus them, athletics revenue versus university revenue, steal this donor for athletics or that should go to the College of Business. We don't really have that type of infighting that is common I shouldn't even say it's common, that I've seen in other universities. And I think, that can be a pressure point for universities. There's donor fatigue, there's corporate sponsor fatigue, there's just fighting over pots of money that the entire university could benefit from. And we just don't have that here. We also don't rely on it here. We have such a strong financial model that's very stable. We operate in volume. We have so many academic offerings. So we aren't limited in what we can offer and the type of students that we can attract. So, those pressure points that are common probably in other places, we don't have here. And I think it's just our culture of collaboration, our culture of continuous improvement, how we constantly adapt to the changing environment as a university. And it's really, I wouldn't say completely eliminated, but it's minimized any of those pressure points that you might see at other universities.
Yeah, I think it was interesting. I was living in Indiana and I saw a commercial about GCU.
Yeah.
And we're like, I think that's Arizona. And then we ended up moving to Arizona. So, the Valley has changed so much. Your campus has changed so much. Where's the optimism of where you can take athletics and what you've been doing for athletics, but also where GCU is in the Valley and the reach that it has?
And we have a lot of room to grow, and that's what we're so excited about. I don't know if people realize how much success we've had in athletics program in such a short amount of time. We've only been Division I for less than 15 years, I believe, and postseason eligible for about 9-10 years, something like that. And we've already won 77 championships as a university. And I think we're going to win more. Our biggest challenge has been that our success and the awareness has not caught up with our success. So the opportunity now that we have to really tell our story as both an athletics program and a university, there's a lot of opportunity. We recently joined the Mountain West. The Mountain West now having multiple national television games for our basketball program. That's going to give us a platform to really tell the story of GCU. We recently signed an agreement of partnership with Arizona Family. They're the premier sports network for sports in the state of Arizona. And that's been significant for us too, even just getting our story across the entire state of Arizona. Those are opportunities that we're really excited about. And we have a lot of room to really focus on that area and continue to build on storytelling of GCU and our success.
Yeah. So, and I know the Mountain West is going to be a great direction for GCU, along with that newness of what that conference will be. What are like the success data points? When you're sitting in that chair, you have a head coach in their chair, and maybe the mission of the school as another data point. But like, where does that decision-making algorithm come together for you?
We measure everything here. We're a very data-driven university where we have a culture of continuous improvement. So we measure that. But obviously athletics, and you know this, it's a performance-based industry. So wins and losses, it's how are we scheduling? What's our net? What's our ranking? So from an athletics standpoint, we look at that. From a marketing standpoint, we're always looking at what's our attendance, and we want to grow that year over year. Where are we compared, benchmarked with the Mountain West? We always made sure we were top of the Western Athletic Conference, and now we want to make sure we're benchmarked in the top of the Mountain West in every possible marketing metric. And then from a university standpoint, we look at Google searches, we look at tune-in campaign. What's our viewership? We look at all of those metrics to make sure that we are continuing to move forward and progressing as we move into the Mountain West and continue to grow our brand.
Now, with moving conferences, maybe moving a mindset as well, because you're going up against different institutions and that bar. What does talent development or talent retainment look like for GCU athletics, trying to keep the talent there, because the successes are backed? I mean, they're behind every one of those coaches.
Yeah, we have two things that really help us retain the people that we want to retain. And the first is our culture. We have a very strong culture here. People that tend to want to be a part of our university are strong in their faith. They believe in our Christian mission. They believe in serving the community. And that's the fabric of who we are. You don't have to be Christian to work here, but embracing our Christian mission and our desire to serve the community as the most important thing. That's part of our culture. We have a very family culture that's centered around Christ. Secondly, we have the resources, and they matter. So we are able to retain, for example, we just signed Shannon Hayes. He's our head softball coach, top 25 program for a good part of last year, has advanced in the NCAA tournament and done that he's made the tournament every single year that he's been there. Well, of course, a lot of people are going to be interested in him. People are investing in softball right now, but he is very strong in his faith. Our Christian mission matters to him and to his entire program. They are a very strong Christian program. And the university gave us the resources to make sure that we made him one of the highest paid coaches in the country. Yeah. So it's all of that. And I think a lot of our coaches, I'll say this, people always remember when coaches leave. They don't remember how many that we've retained. We have retained way more coaches than have left. And typically, again, if we have the resources, and we will invest in the coaches that we really want to retain.
No, that's good. And I think you're so right. Like, the retainment stories aren't out there enough than when someone is leaving, whether it's a good or bad. But now, not everything can be, glorious. So can you walk us through how you manage maybe through a crisis? Like, what's your playbook? Like, you talked about this family culture and, just being there for each other. So when those tough conversations have to happen, what does that look like?
Yeah, well, you mentioned one of the most important things is that we have a very strong culture here. We are used to being flexible, to adapting. And that's what continuous improvement is. You never stay stagnant. So we're typically ready. And, crises are usually predictable to an extent. And so we always are planning. We're always planning ahead. You have to be able to see what's around the corner. And I think our university, our athletics program, just like the rest of our university, has been able to predict what's happening around the corner. When this whole house settlement thing happened and a lot of universities were scrambling, well, like we said, look, we know this is either A, going to happen, B, going to partially happen, or C, not going to happen at all. So what's our plan in place for all three of those scenarios?
Right.
So as soon as it was announced, we already had everything in place. And so, we try as best we can to figure out what's going to happen and not wait for things to happen. And yes, it takes more work to have 5 different plans in place. But on the back end, once that quote unquote crisis happens, we're ready.
Yeah. No, that's good. And that's a good segue. With NIL where it is, where revenue share, where that is, what do you think is like the most underappreciated factor of those, like risk factor, that whether ADs or departments or athletic coaches are still underestimating?
What are the coaches underestimating, or what is the public underestimating about?
Maybe both. I think there's an internal factor, but I think external, it's almost like education. They just have to be educated, but maybe more internally, just where coaches can shift their mindsets and maybe with the collaboration of administrators.
I think it's coaches and student athletes too. I think there's this completely incorrect perception that athletics programs make all this money. And, the bottom line is we're universities are nonprofit, like Division I universities are nonprofit. And athletics is a co-curricular activity. And if you look at the actual data that's public, that the NCAA has put out, the most recent financial data shows that 7% of university athletic programs make money, 7%. Or another way, 93% don't make money. That means a lot of money. And there's this misperception that, we just make all this money. There are a handful of schools that are self-sufficient, and I say literally a handful that are self-sufficient, and they also support a lot of programs. And the bottom line is, yes, in some sports we make some revenue. Does it cover the expenses? No. For the majority of sports, it is an expense that the university covers for student athlete well-being, for community for the university, for a place for everyone to, just come around and build community. It's truly a co-curricular activity and not a profit-making enterprise. And so when we have NIL, and there's companies that we're so fortunate that believe in our mission and want to support our NIL, not everyone is going to get it. It's just not a revenue enterprise.
Right.
And so I think that has to be understood. So when there is NIL or at other universities revenue share, it's an expense to the university, and it's an expense that they usually don't. They're having to try to figure out how to either cut from other areas and take away from other areas, or they're going to exhaust every possible, revenue opportunity they have that honestly could go to other areas. So it's a lot to really be successful in this landscape, but that understanding that we are not pro sports. We are not the bottom line there's no bottom line. Like, we know that we operate at a loss for the benefit of student athletes, the community, and the university.
So maybe talk about how you're structuring that, because it then allows coaches to coach and athletes to be students, but also contribute to the athletic department, but also the guardrails. I mean, you're talking about that. So how are you structuring that as it relates to, one, their well-being, but also coaches want to win. They want to coach, and allow them to focus on those aspects of their programs.
Yeah, we're sticking to who we are, and we're not, just because the landscape has changed doesn't mean we're changing our values. So we're very fortunate that we're able to support NIL through athletically related revenues, through ticket sales, and through corporate sponsors and donors who want to support athletics, new revenue for the university. But we're sticking to who we are, and that is a Christ-centered service with a mission to serve the community. So a lot of our NIL is truly based on how can we, partner with this school, and our student athletes will go there and serve the school, be mentors to the students there in this maybe an area that is financially challenged, or with families that are financially challenged. How do we partner with this hospital and work with kids who are sick? We just find a way, and we find the great thing about our university is our culture is so strong, the awareness of our mission is so strong that typically sponsors that work with us are aligned in values. So they support the same things that we do. So that's how we stick to who we are, our values, our Christ-centered mission, and even in the changing landscape, we find a way to make sure that what is the priority remains the priority.
Yeah, and you had a interim year, under your belt, and in your state, University of Arizona just came out with a feasibility study that they're doing. So, what feasibility style listening have you done that you partook in, and then what did you implement from what you heard, whether it's from donors, from the student athletes, your coaches? How did you put that in place as you heard about what the concerns are when you took over?
Yeah, when I took over, what I noticed was most missing was that we were not fully aligned with the greater university. So it was like the athletics had its own kind of culture, and the university had this other culture. And I talk about it all the time. I'm sure you've heard it, but it's our 4 C's. It's community, collaboration, Christ-centered, and community continuous improvement. And there just wasn't alignment there. So we were not moving nearly as fast as the rest of the university. So that was the immediate need. And so there wasn't necessarily a study. I mean, obviously when we went from D2 to D1, there needed to be some kind of study to make sure that we could do that. And the bottom line was we were very much well prepared. In fact, we were probably more prepared than a lot of Division I institutions to be successful at the level, and we showed that we were. But that goes back to the fact that our university's health was so strong. Enrollment was growing at a time when enrollment's going down. We were growing as a brand, just a lot of health within our university that we just weren't aligned with. So I had a blueprint right from the start. As soon as I stepped into the chair, I'm like, gosh, the university is having all the success, 900 students to 20,000 students in less than 10 years. I mean, that's unheard of. That's like going to the floor in your first few years. Like, they're moving so far ahead and we need to catch up. So why don't we just steal their blueprint? That was my feasibility study. We needed to do what the university was doing. So my first 5 years in the chair, that's what we did. That's what we made sure we were catching up and aligned with the rest of the university. And I think we are there. There's always work to do. We always want to make sure the more that we are successful as an athletics program, the more we remain part of this university, the community, and not the stars of this community. That's hard when everyone knows who your star basketball player is, but we try to maintain that we are a strong part of this community. And I think that's what's allowed us to continue to have success, is just that collaboration and that our culture that is aligned so strongly with our university.
And how do you, I mean, motivation should be internal, but how do you inspire then your executive team, and then then to the coaches, and how do you do that? Now, you talked about the 4 C's, but what does it look like on a weekly, maybe a daily timeline in terms of Are these meetings and are there data point? Like what does it look like?
Yeah, well, it's all of that. And there has to be two things. There has to be support. So resources, but we also have to have relationships with our coaches and our staff. We want to make sure that everyone knows that everyone's part of a championship, from our support staff. We have one of the best equipment rooms, I think, in the country, just a really service-oriented team. We've got a great marketing team. We've got a great video team, and we've got great coaches. And we want to make sure everyone feels valued, supported, recognized. And that just comes down to relationships. I mean, I don't do corny things. I don't do, let's, do an employee of the month. I apologize if anyone else does that, but it's not authentic.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know the people on our team, and I want them to feel like that they can come in my office at any time and have a conversation, that they can call me, text me. And so we have an open door policy with all of our senior staff. There's going to be ups and downs in college athletics. It's a performance-based industry. If you start your conference play and you might be the one with the worst schedule, where you start with the top half of the conference and you start out 0-3 and things feel a little bit down. Well, we can't do the emotions of winning and losing. We have to support our coaches through all of it and make them feel like we get it. We know where you are in, the season. We know there's a lot of season to go,
right.
But we want them to feel like no matter what, we're going to support them. On the other side, but part of that too, there has to be accountability, and it is a performance-based industry. So we measure everything when it comes to our sports programs. We measure wins and losses. We measure strength of schedule, non-conference, conference. We see how you're scheduling. We look at kind of the history of how recruiting has gone. We look at operational spend. We look at everything. If certain metrics aren't met, yes, we do have to make a change, and we've had to do that in the past. But my hope is that we have a, strong enough relationship, and we've made our coaches feel supported enough that when those changes are made, that there's a understanding that it's not personal, not we don't care, we don't love. It's the nature of our business.
So what would be like the most rewarding decision that you have made in your tenure?
Being at GCU, the most rewarding decision. That is a challenging one. I would say, I don't think there's one. I think for me personally, it's coming in with humility to a place like GCU. I've been at 3 different universities, Power 4, different universities, and I could have come in here and thinking that I was going to show everyone how it should be, because I came from Power 4 schools. This is a transition to university. But I think what's helped me personally, and hopefully it's helped our athletics program, and it's the kind of tone of our whole program, is that there's so much to learn from a place that is an industry disruptor. When higher education enrollment is going in not a great direction, we're continuing to be successful, continuing to grow. So there's so much there was so much for me to learn coming into GCU. I love that I am not ever the smartest person in the room. I'm never the biggest team player. There's always someone else that just does something so supportive. I'm never the most creative. There's always someone in the room that challenges you. So coming in with that mindset, I personally have been able to grow so much from being at a place that is so different than any other university in the country.
Oh, that's great. As a high major, mid major capsule, what's going to be the toughest decisions ADs have to make in the next 2, 3, 5 years? I know we can't predict it, but we're in this time that I think there's going to be a lot of money in coming into athletics, but also tough decisions that have to be made. So how will ADs be successful in this time frame?
Yeah, we really have to be very good about determining where we allocate our resources. At some point, there's going to be I don't think there's a ceiling necessarily. I think because the university is growing so quickly and our brand's growing so quickly, we'll continue to have interest in people wanting to be partners with us. But the question is the market, which is a very false and inflated market right now for NIL, is that trajectory going to be so much faster than what universities are able to bring in? And I think there's going to be a point when that does happen. It's already happened. And so universities are going to have to make really good decisions on where do we best allocate our resources. And that's hard because sometimes you have to make personnel decisions. Sometimes you have to make standard of excellence decisions. Do we have to, lower it a little bit here, have a little fewer personnel so that we can continue to operate at a higher level in this area? And it's not going to be easy. There's people involved. There's, again, we want always a standard of excellence with our programs. We're very fortunate again at GCU because our university is so healthy. So I don't think I'm going to have to face those as maybe quickly as other universities might. But those are the decisions that are going to have to strategically be made to be successful in this new landscape.
And you mentioned, revenue and revenue generation. Where's that in play with those daily decisions that you have to make?
Yeah, I mean, it's everyday decision. Like everything we do is how do we draw more eyes? How do we get more interest from corporate sponsors? How do we build relationships with new donors, either individual corporate donors? I mean, it's every day that we're trying to figure out. And it's tough because, a lot of what we do, we're in the kid business. We're working with 18 to 21-year-olds. So the bottom line isn't always that we care about our kids. We want them to graduate. I love the fact that I have student athletes that have graduated recently over the last few years that still reach out and are very thankful and have so much gratitude for what GCU has done for them. So we're in a good spot. We're in a good spot, but it's changing really quickly.
Okay, so if you have an extra $3 million, what would you invest in for maybe the greatest multi-year return for GCU? Where would you put that money?
I think at some point we will have to build a larger team to be able to tell our story and sell and market. And we have a large creative content team. We probably have a P4 sized team, maybe even a P2 sized team. I don't think there's a P4 anymore. Honestly, that's probably very controversial to say. I think there's a P2.
You're right.
We have a P2 sized team in creative content, but again, we are growing so quickly and moving so quickly that our PR hasn't caught up with it. And it sounds weird because you might think, oh, we would spend it on a center on our card, but that's like that's not a long-term investment. I think we probably do a little bit of both. Yeah. Probably put it into NIL, but I would also invest in making sure that, we are constantly thinking about telling our story, marketing, and getting long-term return on our programs.
There's been talk and endless articles about Title IX. Where is that going? How are you protecting Title IX? How's the institution protecting Title IX? Where's the investment in that communication within your universe?
We focus more on making sure our student athletes, regardless of sport, have the best possible experience. And Title IX is the great thing about it is it's provided so many opportunities for female student athletes, for female programs. The challenge of it is the tediousness of every single detail. I mean, it could drive you nuts and it can make you go broke. If you really pay attention to every single detail of making sure there's, always make sure there's equitable opportunities, but trying to make them as equal as possible. So we really focus on let's make sure our student athletes have the best possible experience. And sometimes that might mean we're making sure certain women's sports are, we have initiatives that focus on those sports even more than some other sports. Men's basketball, it's the driver. That is the driver for revenue. It's the driver for brand awareness. It's the driver for everything. And that's the reality. But we're going to make sure that, for example, Arizona Family, we just started our new partnership. This is the first year that almost all of our sports are now on local TV all across the state of Arizona. So we've got all of our women's soccer games, the majority of our women's soccer games, our women's volleyball games. We've got great exposure for them, even though we know from a national standpoint, with our conference deal, they're going to pick the men's basketball games because that's the driver for them. Well, we're going to make sure that our women's student athletes also have exposure on local TV. So it's just making sure they have a great experience. We have, donor events that now we've expanded to include 8 opportunities for our women's programs. And we started a full initiative. It's called our Grace, Grit, and Glory Initiative. And the whole idea is that we want to be the premier university for women's sports. So we want to excel in women's sports. And that's it's exposure, it's marketing, but it's also things like, is our healthcare, is our sports medicine and our training, are we making sure we're considering factors that are more based on women's health and not just, health for our programs? Are we thinking about, not to get too much, but, health for menstrual cycles are different than health for, there's just things you have to factor in for women's health. Right. That's all part of our Grace, Grit, and Glory initiative. It's making sure that we are fully supporting in every area our women's sports. So it's hard. Title IX is hard. There's a lot of regulatory things. There's laundry lists. There's financial aid equity. There's roster participation equity. Those are all things we pay attention to. But I've found that when you really focus on, are we giving our students the best student athlete experience? That's really the best way to make sure that that's truly, to me, more what gender equity is.
Yeah, that's so good, because I think there's differences, and you have to manage both of those differences at the same time, unfortunately, within that, whatever years that they're there. Can you talk a little bit about the conversation? You don't have to get, details, but lift the hood up just a little bit on what are the conversations you're having with the president, with your team about, how do you know you're picking the right conference? How do you know, and I know GCU was, kind of moving towards the West Coast and then change, what factors are going into that as you're talking about all this other stuff, the media, the NIL and all of these other, I would say, benefits and perks that you can gain? Yeah.
So, conference realignment is a presidential decision. It's just voted on by presidents. It's decided on by presidents. So, and it's a university decision. It's not an athletics program decision. So President Mueller and I were constantly having communication through, we have been for the last 10 years on conference realignment. We've been very fortunate because of our success, the fact that we're located in one of the largest markets in the country, that there's been a lot of interest. Multiple conferences have been interested in us. And so, we have to make sure that what's going to give us great exposure, what's going to be the greatest competition, especially in basketball, and, what universities are aligned with us. And the Mountain West made the most sense, and it checked every box, from their TV deals. I think they have this year, it's around 70 national games that they had televised. That's an enormous, that's a tremendous amount compared to especially what we had. Financially, they really put us in a position where we would be at a financial advantage compared to where we were. And then just the culture of the Mountain West it's an interesting, it's a very collegial conference. It's interesting how those presidents are very much very welcoming, very aligned, really great experience just in our first couple months being in the Mountain West. And they have a great leader in Gloria and a great staff. But if you look at, if you look at the makeup of the universities, they're really more similar to us. We are a private university, but we're a large private university. We're like a private university with low cost. So we're a private Christian university that almost operates like a public institution. So, national brands, we are a national university. We have students from all over the country, competitive. That's obviously us, especially in our, basketball, baseball, softball. We're very competitive, and passionate fan bases. I mean, everyone knows about our Havocs, and we travel well, and there's a lot of, we have a great, the Havocs are almost their own brand.
Yeah, they are. That's right.
All those things, we're aligned so well. So we're really excited about this year, and excited to see how the season goes. And it was a big jump for us competitively. I don't know if people realize how strong the Mountain West is in multiple sports. I mean, they're top 10, top 8 in many of their sports and most of their sports. And so it's a huge jump in competition, but we like the challenge, and we think it's gonna be great for our university.
Now you've after the first part of your career, you've now come home. So what does that mean to be able to lead an athletics department, home, and you're just down the street from where you grew up? Like, what does that mean to you?
Oh, it's been great. I mean, I love Phoenix. It's just it's a great city. It's the 5th largest city, but it doesn't feel like there's a community feel to it. And to be able to connect with a great community, to be able to serve where I grew up has been, it's definitely a blessing. I love having that. My dad is here, and he now is probably the Lopes' biggest fan. He will follow every game. And so, and just GCU is such a special place, and to get everyone in Phoenix to rally around this great university, it's just a blessing. So I feel very thankful to be able to be back here and to be part of something that's really special.
Paint the Valley purple. Is that right. Still?
Paint the Valley purple.
That's right. Yeah. Just a few more questions, but before I get to the last two, I just want to acknowledge I just watching from afar an athletic director put themselves out there that like you have, I think is great. I think it humanizes just the leadership, even as a now former college coach, but as a college coach, you want your leader to just show personality, but also make the tough decisions when you have to. And I think that's what you're doing, and it's great to see especially the growth of GCU. Where do you think college athletics is moving towards? Like, where will it be in 5 years, 10 years? Like what? And I know this is vague, and we're putting on our cap right now, but what would it look like? What is it centered around? What is the experience of the college student athlete going to be?
I think college athletics has really been beat down, I think, in the last few years. There's just this perception that, and it's partly our fault for not telling our story and staying in front of who we are as an industry. But there's just this misperception that we take advantage of kids, and, we're these big revenue generators, that we're withholding all this. And that's not who we are. As an industry, we care about our student athletes. We do this. We put in these hours. We, sacrifice time and from our families and from vacations and all the things that, we could be doing because we care about student athletes. We care about developing student athletes. We care about our university. We care about community. We care about all of that. And as much as the industry is changing, as far as, now, we don't meet with parents, we meet with agents, it's different. And I think that's going to continue to happen. I mean, there's going to be more regulation, more likely federal regulation. We'll see what passes and what doesn't. I hope the lawsuits stop, because there's no other industry in the world. There's no other place that has college athletics like we have. There's no other industry in the world, and it's a great thing. But I think the core of who we are, for the practitioners that have been in this industry for a long time, that's not going to change. We're still going to love our student athletes. We're going to still sacrifice. We're going to still do everything we can to make sure that they're prepared for life after graduation, that they're growing as people, that they're being successful academically, and that they're set for life after they leave our university. I don't think that will change. So despite all the changes in maybe there's more transaction than we've had before. There's a little bit more agents involved and not as much with families and the student athletes themselves on the front end. The core of who we are, which is we're in the kid industry. We're always going to pour and invest in our student athletes.
Last question. Best thing about your job?
It's people. I just went through this exercise, that's why I could answer it so quickly. I think, you would think it would be some kind of perk or something like that. But I love the kind of people that are attracted to be a part of GCU, our student athletes, the community, our fans. We have the best people that we're surrounded with, and to be able to have a connection to them and to get to know their story and just that access to know just a great community. I love that part about my job. So
yeah, well, it's a good note to leave, just because it starts with people and ends with people, and how you treat them, how you invest with them, develop them, and retain them. I mean, that seems like the cycle of success for me. But Jamie, thank you so much for taking the time. I think this conversation has been great, just simply because I think what has been missing in the last maybe 5-10 years is just that conversation of how do we get better? How do we move forward? I think it's very easy to just kind of focus on the bad and what we're in right now. But I think you all are doing it at GCU, and just wanted to thank you for your time.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you using this as a platform to help college athletics tell the true story of who we are. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much. To all of you who are watching and listening, thank you. New episodes drop every Tuesday. So please subscribe and follow and add any insights that you can. Thank you very much. We'll see you on the next one.